Thank you for the support on my last video. For new viewers, this is the second video in my video essay series on political theory and theorists. First focused on the emancipation of the proletariat from the world of senses they experience under capitalism, and this one explores Marx's views on religious suffering throughout the ages. I hope you enjoy, drop a comment if you have any questions, and like and subscribe if this content interests you. What are the implications of Marx's claim that religious suffering is at the same time an expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering? Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, sentiment of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people.
我是种地的嘛，又不给他们集中，一带了对种地都是盘存在一块。
因为我听说，最近那边的传统的文化是消除的。
对，少数民族跟汉族要一样，吃啥都一样。
为什么？
就是说团结一样嘛，单同，就是说同吃同住同劳动。
A Chinese woman said to a vice reporter on a train in Xinjiang, Chinese Autonomous Region. Conspiracy theories, lies, and fragments of truth surround the actions conducted by the Chinese Communist Party in this place. Inherently radical decisions and procedures have been documented, criticized, and praised. Why they perform these actions is directly tied to religion and its struggle. Struggle for meaning in a world that does not offer one. Only man creates meaning. He invents a false sun and follows it within the guise of his own deluded vision. These visions have created everything that has, does, and will exist as humans appropriate their surroundings. Only man creates man, but more than this, he adjusts, stultifies, empowers, and kills man. Beyond this, he does it to anything he can acquire, tangible or intangible, ideas or stones, concubines or prophecies. In Xinjiang, primarily Muslims, but also Christians and other religious minorities, being adjusted to suit the objectives of the Communist Party. Microcosm of organized religion in its relation to modern states is clearly present in this situation. As a society built around the ideas of Marx and subsequent Marxist thinkers, the Communist Party's interest to indoctrinate those with other indoctrinations. In doing so, the spirit and way of life of those who adhere to religion are jeopardized and forcefully re-evaluated. Marx's claim entails that religion must be subordinate to a capitalist or socialist state's objectives as it moves into the next inevitable stage in history. Today, China is the most successful Marxist country and also the largest country in the world. While only 200,000 square miles smaller than the United States at 3.6 million square miles, its population, 1.41 billion, is slightly over 4 times that of the United States, 333 million. Furthermore, as the world's largest manufacturer of goods, it seems fair to say that not all countries inspired and guided by Marxism are failed or failing states. As many dissidents throughout the West espouse, since the first contact between the civilizations of Afro-Eurasia, East and West, South and North, an abundance of spiritual aromas have meshed together, clashed recklessly, and dissipated from the atmosphere. These traveling fragrances exist as religions, protests of religion, and today, as the political economic forms employed by modern nations. For the US, this is capitalism and Christianity, and for China, they describe themselves as socialist with Confucian characteristics as their guiding moral and economic philosophy. In this situation, there exists either two world spirits or a bipolar one. Hegel is said to have posited that history ended with the conditions reached by Germany in the 19th century in which he lived. However, this underestimates the scope of Hegel's theory. The conditions he describes gave birth to a race, an ongoing race that authors like Francis Fukuyama have prematurely called to an end. Hegel, arguably, might have gazed even further into the human future than Marx. Is communism the freest association? Who is to say, as it is yet to fully materialize for humanity? Firstly, Marx, inspired by Hegel, is absolutely correct in his day and today when he says the struggle against religion is, therefore, indirectly a struggle against that world whose spiritual aroma is religion. Nearly 5/6 of the people on the planet today are followers of religion. However, this presents a bleak outlook on how the world spirit or spirits have developed or divided. Since the 19th century, ideologies and states based on and formed upon Marxist thought have been attempted multiple times and failed. Dissolution of the USSR, the current state of the socialist Venezuelan government, and critics of Marxism contend that Cuba has also begun the process of becoming a failed state. Despite these misfortunes and the suffering of people throughout the world, countries like Vietnam and China have employed this ideology and have been highly successful. Astonishingly, these countries represent 18.63% of the world's population. Nearly a fifth of the world lives under these conditions, and one of them, China, possesses the highest purchasing power parity in the world. It cannot be denied that Marx's objectives continue to be actualized. Despite these successes, masses throughout the West and in all places where the petty bourgeoisie and their enablers clog the airways with their harmful rhetoric, deny and disillusion themselves with such a philosophy. Marxism and its outline telos are hard to understand and comprehend. An important principle of how Marx's philosophy interacts with the world today is how it antagonizes the fossilized ideologies that preceded it and how those have evolved into its modern competitors. Before Marxism, classical liberalism entered the mixture of aromas within Europe and then the rest of the world. After Marx, the advent of ideologies like neoliberalism and the National Socialism employed by the Third Reich punched back at the principles of Marxism and historical analysis while reinforcing their own superiority. In the case of neoliberalism, individuals like Adam Smith and his literature are revered almost divinely by proponents of laissez-faire capitalism. While Smith's treatises and thoughts have been immensely successful, he is not a prophet. His words are not divine scripture revealing an ultimate truth. Circling back, for Nazi Germany, hate-fueled nationalism, combined with state subsidization of mercantilist and imperialist corporations, mobilized a radical militaristic volcano that erupted over Europe, sowing seeds of hatred throughout the globe. These highly reactive ideologies can violently fizzle out of existence or slowly and peacefully mix together through conflict and strife, ultimately scrambling progression toward the next historical stage. World War II and the world it sculpted is one of, if not the clearest example of the conditions that continually modernize and force the world to change under capitalism. In the century before the Third Reich, Germany produced great minds like Hegel and Marx, and the next, it produced villains like Hitler and Goebbels. Marx laid out the superiority of capitalism's ability to produce efficiently and in unheard of quantities. As a result, capital and imaginative fanaticism possess the ability to create horrible fortresses that regressively beguile man. These domains will continue to be churned out and bubble across the planet as a real historical process plays out. As soon as Jew and Christian come to see in their respective religions nothing more than stages in the development of the human mind, snakeskins which have been cast off by history, and in man as the snake who clothed himself in them, they will no longer find themselves in religious opposition, but in a purely critical, scientific and human relationship. Marx does not clearly define the situation or time when adherents will finally come to see, but his work allows the ability to chart out possible paths and fully analyze the material conditions that create possible futures for humanity. The Communist Party in China occupies regions where the minds of individuals stray away from the uncharted road beaten by the ruling class. All ideologies must propel themselves from influential and revered scripture into practiced, real actions. Neither Islam nor Marxism started as violent actions, but for their preservation and realization, violence and immorality bolstered and solidified their ascendancy. A rejection of fellow humans, a bow to a mind phantom. Marxism and its realization are impeded by and detest the fictional mind kingdoms that imprison humans into variously ruled and designed zoo enclosures. While not bound by pains or fences like animals in a zoo, man is allowed to come and go when he experiences religious freedom. Yet, in some cases, he is bound into one exhibit or another. When he is free, he has the option to leave the zoo and reject adherence to the will of a particular form of himself. Once outside, he can finally look at himself as a piece within an entirety instead of a fraction of a fraction. In other words, the criticism of religion disillusions man so that he will think, act and fashion his reality as a man who has lost his illusions and regained his reason, so that he will resolve about himself as his own true son. Those who idolize wealth in the same way a bishop prioritizes the teaching of a certain doctrine delude themselves by favoring social forces that produce certain economic or religious conditions. The ends of these conditions are the detestable pillars of human limitation and exploitation, whereas humanist ideologies embrace one's own mind and thoughts while also regarding the will, needs, and autonomy of others. If man was not eventually to gravitate toward a universal whole, why did he build the wheel, the car, the steamboat, or the airplane? Even better, why did he build the virtual realm in which information and people become almost universally connected? Like the last and longest stage of the massive suns that exist in the universe, when their gravity becomes so immense and collapses under itself into a singularity with an infinite density, the black hole obscures its processes through its manipulation of light, just as the next stage of human association blurs itself through the daily productivity and activities of man. Everything the black hole does is natural in the same way everything that man does is natural. The unfathomable nature of a black hole is synonymous with the mysterious and seemingly infinite productions of the human mind. Why does the human adjust, judge, or perceive others, or put men of his same nation in a re-education camp? Does he at least do this with good intentions? Does a black hole have bad intentions? All that can be declared surely is that there is intent in both situations. Marx did not intend to erase religion from the human calculation, but instead reorder its mental importance within the minds of all. In the final analysis, if addition and subtraction happen after multiplication and division, then the facilitation of needs and equality are to occur prior to the indulgence of mental fictions and adherences. Religion, throughout the entirety of human history, has been a topic of major controversy. Furthermore, its relation to the nation-state has complexified life within modernity in incalculable ways. The secular and religious ways of life cannot completely destroy one another, and even if they were to attempt such a feat, preceding generations will always generate new ideologies and ways of thinking that reanimate spiritual conflict. In my own opinion, religious life offers a great deal of benefits, whether it be increased engagement in community or literature that can allow one to lead a good life or improve it. But ultimately, I sense that it handicaps the mind in some regard. It does not necessarily reduce the scope of one's mental faculties, but it sets up mental screens that thwart the ability to rationalize our material existence and situation. A novel I recently read named The Good Muslim by Tahmima Anam explores the tension previously described through the lens of a Bangladeshi family shortly after attaining their independence. More than this, I also recommend an essay by Marx referenced in this video, this being On the Jewish Question. Marx believed that religion and spirituality are compatible with political and social equality, and in his essay he corroborates this by speaking on debates over the Jewish question from his time. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you found this video useful and/or entertaining. As always, suggestions and questions are always wanted.